again, thank you Sumit for the introduction, and it is lovely for me. I'm glad that I'm speaking here. This is my second time presenting at the TWT 5, and I'm much excited to share my knowledge over here. So today I'll be speaking about how you can use data analytics to improve your documentation, and by the end of this presentation, you'll get to know some practical strategies which will help you to make your documentation more smarter, more user-focused, and more measurable. We'll also know how to use data insights to know the gaps in your documentation. You can also boost user engagement with the different tools, analytical tools that we use in the industry. And you can also know some how you can measure your documentation impact on the user documentation. So without any further ado, we'll start. So why data-driven documentation matters? So in this section, we'll be covering these 3 points: the importance of creating user-centric documentation, the evolving needs of the audiences, and the shift towards data-backed decisions while creating your content strategies. So the main point is what's the importance of creating user-centric documentation? So as a technical writer, it's our basic job to serve the user needs, and this can be achieved by data-driven approaches, which help us truly understand what the user needs. And this, with the help of data analytical tools, we get some metrics that can help us understand what user needs. And these metrics are like page views, or page counts, or frequent time, how much frequently the user visits. So let's consider an example over here. For example, there is a frequently visited page in your documentation, and for some of the other reason, that page is not being viewed, means that there is a drop in the user visiting that page. So that can be analyzed with data analytics. Different tools of data that can be used to analyze that why the users are not being visiting this page, which was earlier frequently visited. Second, the evolving needs of the audience. So technology and user needs are changing rapidly, and there might be some solutions which were good yesterday, but those cannot address the today's challenges, and hence we need data analytical tools to address the evolving needs of the users. For example, let's suppose there is a company who hosts their documentation only in text-based formats, but with data analytics, the technical writer team found that users are now accessing the documentation more and more on mobile devices, as well as the search queries. We found that with the search queries, the users were always looking for videos. So with all these insights from data analytics, the technical writer team can draft their documentation for more mobile optimized devices, and they can create some video tutorials that can address the user confusions. Next, the shift towards data-backed decision. So there was a time, when technical writing was done just based on intuitions and past experiences. So these methods might have their own significance, no doubt, but they are not always precise. And hence we need data analytical tools to get data-backed decisions on your technical strategy. Let's suppose consider one more example. There is a company who drafted an FAQ section based on the past experiences or intuition that users might need some help in the FAQ section if they face so and so issue, just on intuition. But while doing an A/B testing, they created 2 versions of an FAQ section, version 1 and version 2. And with the help of data analytics, they found that version 2 was more helpful because it reduced the number of support tickets related to that documentation or that part of the documentation. Hence, this insight or this example shows us that data analytics or any data-backed decisions in your content strategy is much more useful than as compared to the past experiences or intuitions. And this can be achieved with data analytical tools. Next, using user data to drive content. So we'll now cover what kind of data should we collect while drafting your content strategy, and what tools you can use for collecting those data and why it matters. So the first is tracking user interaction with your documentation, such as page views, clicks, and the amount of time the user spent on the documentation. This this is very much helpful. I'll back this with an example over here. For example, there is a part there is a part in the documentation such as installation guides, and for that there is a separate section as well called as a troubleshooting section, which allows the users to find any issue or find any information that they are not getting with their documentation. With the help of data analytics, it was found that users are spending more time on troubleshooting section and they were skipping the installation guides. So what does this mean? Either one of the two things. One, the installation guide is too basic, or second, it has data which is not clear to the users. So this kind of data can be achieved, this kind of insight can be achieved with this, and you can make accordingly changes in the documentation and help the user journey make much more smoother. Now consider the value of capturing the most common searches. Most common searches is something that is a direct indicator that what users are looking for. For example, if again I'll back each of these points with an example so that you can get it very much clearly. So if a company is hosting a documentation, and when they export their search queries, it was found that most of the users always search on how to reset a device. So this is a clear indicator that users are facing issue while resetting their device, and the strategy that needs to be applied is either come up with a step-by-step guide on how to reset a device, or either creating a video tutorial on about resetting a device, thereby addressing the user needs. Next is user rating and feedbacks. User rating and feedbacks these are the qualitative measures. This means nothing can be much more important than the user itself telling that there is some documentation issue in this section. So these are very much important. And user rating and feedback, I guess, is one of the best metric that we can get from data analytic tools. Whenever a user rates your site or your documentation good, or if there are less feedback on your documentation, that's a good sign that your documentation is very much engaging and it provides more information, useful information that the users are looking for. Now tools that we use for tracking engagement. So I guess all of the people over here use data analytic tools such as Google Analytics or Hotjar. But we here at Deso Systems, we use Pendo, obviously because we don't have any choice. It's used at the organization level and approved by the higher management. But some other points that I would like to mention about Pendo is similar to other data analytic tools. It gives tons of metrics like page views or frequently used pages, frequently visited pages, which are the pages that are not mostly visited. But there are some features that we as a technical writers like about Pendo is the heat map sessions and the session recordings, which allows us to know exactly how the users interact with the documentation and what part of the documentation the users have interacted the most. Session recordings helps us understand how the user is interacting with the documentation. It literally gives us a video recording about the user navigation. It also tells us the navigation paths of the user, that from one page to another page, how the user has gone, the starting point and the end point of the users. So this is really helpful for us to draft our content strategy and make the changes accordingly to make the user experience as smooth as possible. So finally, why it matters. So understanding user behavior reveals the content gaps and pain points that you might otherwise miss. Let's suppose that you have created a masterpiece of a documentation. According to you, you wrote the documentation in a structured way, the bullet points, the screenshots, videos, GIFs, everything else. You think that the documentation is clear. In your mind, this cannot get any better. But this is where you have to step in the user's shoes or the reader's shoe and make sure that the documentation is good or not. And here, data analytics acts as a mirror. It shows us what are the pain points that we as a technical writer cannot see, but when you are in the reader space, it shows us. For example, you might have written the documentation very well, but for a user, the language might be too technical or too much dense. So that all these insights can be taken from the data analytic tools. The second point is you can prioritize the high impact areas. Obviously, there are sections in the documentation or where these are the high impact areas means these are the important sections, and there are other which are not important. Important sections means those documentation which are necessary for the users to follow in order for him to go from to the product journey. So with data analytics, you can prioritize on those sections of the documentation and invest more time there, apart from instead of investing more time on low impact areas. Okay, analyzing user behavior to improve content. So what are the key metrics that you should track to strengthen your content strategy? First is the bounce rate. Can anyone tell me what a bounce rate is? Yeah?
So how long is your page?
Correct. Yes, so bounce rate is nothing but how long a user stays on a page and then leaves again. So the higher the bounce rate, the more problem you have with your documentation. So make sure that the bounce rate is always on the lower side, so that users, this means that users are staying on your page, spending more time on the page. This means that the content is more engaging and users are finding what they're looking for, and it's the lower the bounce rate, the better the documentation. Second, popular sections and frequently visited pages. Like I said, there are high impact areas. So popular sections and frequently visited pages, most of the times high impact areas or high impact sections of the documentation falls under this category, the popular section. So with data analytic tools, make sure that you apply the strategy first on the popular sections and frequently visited pages. Track those pages so that whenever there is a drop in the pages, so you can understand why there is a drop and what measures you can take to make sure that the pages remain most frequently visited and popular throughout your journey. Second, time on the page and exit points. With data analytic tools, you can understand the time on the page a user spends and what are the exit points. So while using Pen to at our organization, what we do is we use session recordings, which tells us how much time a user spends and what are the user behaviors while seeing the documentation. If a user scrolls through a term up and down for a long time, it means that there is some problem in the documentation users are not getting. And we also record the exit points of the users throughout in the session recordings. If the user leaves the page in middle of use the section in the middle of the page, then it means that the data he's looking for, he's not getting it. And if he lands in the troubleshooting sections, then we have a problem over there. This means the user which is looking, the data which the user is looking for, he did not get there, and that's why he landed in the troubleshooting section. Analyzing trends. So we monitor which sections are the most popularly visited and what are the trends the user follow. For example, let's suppose there is a gradual decline in the page view counts, and this is not something that you have seen. So data analytic tools help us what are the current trends going on and why there is a drop in the page views, and this trend can be calculated with the data analytic tools that you have in hand. Let's suppose there are, I'll type this with an example. So we have, everyone must be aware with the API documentation. If you see that there is a certain drop in the page views for the API documentation, this means that the data over there is outdated, and you need to make sure that these API documentation are updated with a certain release or eventually every now and then. Like I said, in the Pendo, we use heat maps and session recordings. Heat maps are a graphical representation of the crowd that we get on a certain page. And session recordings, as the name suggests, is a recording of the session of every user that logs into the documentation site and shows us the user journey from the starting point to the end points. So eventually, the reason why I've mentioned heat maps and session recordings is because we felt it very helpful for our content strategy. So iterating documentation based on real-time feedback. So why real-time feedback is one of the most important metrics that you can get from data analytic tools is. In today's fast-paced environment, our documentation must meet the evolving needs of the users and the rapidly changing expectations of the users. And how this can be achieved is how you can know the user's expectation is by directly implementing their feedback and by taking their feedback into consideration. And also quick updates to your documentation is a must. Obviously, for example, if you have a product release, new features are released, you do not go out with the old documentation. You always make changes to the documentation mentioning the important features or the new enhancements or the features that are deprecated, something like that. Real-time feedback loops. So there are certain ways that you can get feedbacks from the user. Most of them are implementing forms and surveys. Now here at Deso System, what we do is we draft our content in Confluence and publish it on a separately different platform known as Knowledge Hub, which is powered by Zoom. And on both these platforms, we have made sure that the end user on Confluence, the end users are the different product teams, the QA teams, the developers, the SMEs. And on Knowledge Hub, the end users are the audience who reads the documentation. We have made sure that to get the feedback in the platform itself. Why? On Confluence, where we draft the documentation, we get feedback from the developers, the SMEs, which helps us to understand where the gaps are, technical gaps in the documentation, so that whatever we write is technically correct or not. And the benefit of having the feedback inbuilt in-app feedback functionality on Knowledge Hub help us understand how users are getting the content and what are the so that they can give their feedback and we can implement it, making the journey much more smoother. So user satisfaction, yeah, this is one of the most important thing. So anybody here have used net banking for SBI app, SBI net banking? So whenever you log out, you get a series of numbers from 0 to 9, which tells us, are you satisfied with the journey or the experience? So that is the satisfaction score. And most of the time it is also referred to as NPS, Net Promoter Score. So anywhere between 0 to 6, it means that you need to work on your user experience. Anywhere between 7 to 8 means, yeah, it's good, but there are chances of improvement. And more than 9, so you have done an excellent job and keep it up. So calculating this net NPS scores and other user satisfactions, like giving ratings. For example, in App Store, we have a rating for each app, 3.5 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. So all such ratings can be, you can use different tools for your documentation platform and get such ratings so that you know if users are satisfied or not. Tools for collecting and responding to feedback. So if there are no in-app feedback tools, there are different tools that you can use and incorporate in your documentation platform where you host your documentation. There are tools like SurveyMonkeys and Typeforms, which helps us to get feedback from the users. They can be used as a plugin or an add-on. And since we do not need at Deso Systems, we have in-app messaging and feedback system. So we are good with that. Any feedback that users give is directly on the documentation. We implement it then and there itself and publish the documentation. Live analytics and data dashboards. So each one of you, if you are familiar with the data analytic tools that you use in-house, live analytics and each tool, whether it be Pendo or Google Analytics, each of them offers live dashboards. And live dashboards is a direct indicator that how your documentation is performing. So make sure to implement those numbers, take those numbers into consideration. If the numbers are good, you have to keep it up. If the numbers are dropping, you have to work on it, plan your content strategy accordingly. And leveraging user comment is, again, I said, this is the most qualitative insight that you can get from the data analytic tools. Implementing user feedback directly or the feedback that user is given. It is a direct indicator that this is the problem and you have to make sure that you have to address it. Now I'll back this total presentation with a real world example that we face in our company. So I'll set the context first, the strategy and the outcome. So if you can see in the screenshot here I have provided. So this is one of the documentation that we published in the month of January. You can see that on the right side, It's for the month of January, and the page views you can see is just 347. So when we published the documentation, we went through the data analytics, and we saw that the page count was very low, the page views were very low, the bounce rate was too high, and the feedbacks also that were given by the users were too much, and we knew that there is some problem with the documentation. Also, the support queries related to that section of the documentation, there were a number of support queries, support tickets for that. So what we did was, we came up with a strategy. We implemented the feedback. So one of the feedback that users gave was the language was too technical, too dense for them to understand. So what we did was, we came up with some clear and concise language, broke huge steps or procedures into small steps, backed it up with screenshots, videos, sometimes GIFs as well. We also made sure to add screenshots with an alt text so that user understand which section of the product we are referring to. And the outcome you can see for the same product, the page views have grown more than 600 times. It was 2,500 for the month of February. And this was because in analytics we also saw a lower bounce rate, higher page views, and the feedback was almost close to zero. We got one feedback which was not related to the content we drafted over there. So I consider that as zero feedback given. So what are the key takeaways we can take from this while using data analytics? First is start small. So data analytics can be used if you are familiar with it, well and good, but if not, make sure to start small. So don't apply data analytics to whole documentation. Focus on just high impact areas. If everything goes well as per your plan, make sure to gradually increase it and cover the rest of your documentation. Second, use qualitative and quantitative data together. So when I say quantitative data, it means the numbers that you get from the data analytics, that is the page count, frequently visited pages, clicks, search queries, etc. And when I say qualitative, it means the feedback. So whenever you, again consider if you get from data analytics, if you see there is decrease in the frequently visited pages or page clicks or page views for that is a quantitative measure. That is a quantitative data, which tells there is something wrong on that page. But the feedback given by the users tells us what's wrong on that page. So you should make sure that to use quantitative and qualitative data both together to achieve your end goal. Lastly, keep iterating. As I said, if there is a new feature or new release, obviously you can't go with the same set of documentations every time. You have to make sure that your documentation stays evolving. Whether it's for new release or not, make sure that the documentation stays evolving and changing as per the user needs and user comments. Keep your documentation up to date so that the user journey and user experience is at top-notch level. So the challenges. There were quite a few challenges that we face while using data analytics. One is the data load. So data load is, while using data analytics, you get tons of metrics. Because data analytics provides a lot of metrics to you, but it's up to you to make sure that which metrics you have to be dependent on. Rather than using all the metrics at once, focus on only those metrics that might be very much helpful to you to make sure that your user content strategy is as smooth as possible. For example, you focus on the bounce rate or the page views to begin with. If all these are fall into pieces as you plan, then you can move on to other metrics and then to the whole documentation. Second one is getting buy-in from stakeholders. So getting buy-in from stakeholders is one of the biggest challenges. I guess all of you might be aware of that. But you have to make sure to back your decisions with the data, like I said earlier, because obviously the leadership won't spend the time unless and until it's beneficial for the country, for the industry and for the company. So what we did is, I wasn't there at that time because it hasn't been so long for me at the system. But I cross-checked with the senior members and they said that before opting Pendo, the leadership was hesitant as usual. And what they did was they took a trial for the product and they showed the leadership that earlier these were the numbers, these were the number of people using or viewing our documentation, and now our documentation has been reaching so much number of people, and they saw everything was backed by data and the numbers. And once the leadership sees the numbers, it's very much easy for us. Now, the future of data-driven. What's the future? So one is the personalized documentation experience. Why? Because I'm relating this point particularly with Pendo, because Pendo has the ability to segment users based on their behavior. So we have the ability to make changes only to specific set of specific set of users. So for example, there are a few users. We at Deso Systems. So the product I work for is a medical product, and there are different medical industry companies. So we at Deso System make sure to make changes to a set of documentation only for a specific set of users. So that way you can create personalized documentation for a personal experience for users as per their needs. Second is predictive analytics. So data analytics, this is a one step further than data analytics. Why? Because you can predict trends using data analytics and make the changes to your documentation accordingly. So I'll take an example here. When I was a content writer before, so I always used to wonder why my manager is asking me to write content about Holi and Gudi Padwa in the month of December. So at that time I was new and I was new to the industry. But later, few years later, I understood that he used Google Analytics at that time, and he was aware that during Gudi Padwa and Holi or something like that, people will search for those articles. And before people tried searching, it's better for us to write it now, so that there would be much more traffic at the time of Gudi Padwa at some occasions. So that's why in such situations you can use predictive analytics with the help of data analytics. I know many of you are looking for how you can use AI over here, but I did not get any chance to experiment that due to some constraint in my organization. So I would definitely try this and come up with how you can use AI in data analytics. I would love to, but I'll need some time to experiment on this. I'll need some permissions with the higher management. And I guess that's it. Thank you for your time. If you want to connect with me, you can always scan this and get in touch with LinkedIn, and I'm open to questions now.
We have questions. Yeah.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session. So I wanted to know whether Pendo is better or Google Analytics.
I am not sure if I am worthy to answer that, because I did not get any chance to work with Google Analytics. But surely, I can say one thing, that each and every data analytic tool somewhat or the other offers the same metrics which are useful for the documentation. Yeah, heat maps and session recordings, as I said, are useful to us, so I prefer Pendo over Google Analytics.
Okay, so Google Analytics does not have these features.
I am not aware of that.
Okay, cool. Because I have both of these tools in my office, so I just wanted to understand which one to go for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a wonderful session.
Thank you.
Just one question: has the product management ever collected this data from you? For example, if a particular page or topic is getting a lot of hits, does that mean the feature in the product needs to be improved or needs to be intuitive? So have you shared this information with the product?
So we at Deso Systems have a routine that every month we share the analytics to the product team, so that they are well aware about how the product is doing. And for new features, we share it specifically for the new features as well. And if we are getting more views on a specific page, so that, like you said, it might mean that the page is doing well, or there is some problem. But if there is problem in the page, we go to the feedback section. If there is no feedback, that means the page is doing well. So we use this to our benefit, because if there are some related topics, we direct the users, we implement the link, so we direct the users to the related topics, thereby increasing the page views there as well. I hope I answered. Thank you.
Hey, thanks Vaibhav, and thanks for researching and presenting this. I just want to add a few things over here. So one is about the bounce rate, what you mentioned. So bounce rate, if it is like high, it is good. But then at the same time, sometimes it is based on the search. Means if you have to improve it, then the search should be improved, as well as the navigation part, you have to rethink about it. And the second point I want to add is about the feedback. As you talked about the surveys and the feedback form. So many companies take it very seriously and they have this feedback mechanism. If you want to take action on that, they even ask for emails so that they can get back to customers. But then there are SLAs also around it. Means in the Citrix documentation, we have like lot of feedback coming from customers, and there is a 1 month SLA. At the most, you should address it by a month, and if it is not done, then support team gets after you, like why this was not done and all those kind of things. The third thing what I want to highlight is to the managers over here. So many times what happens is you have a crunch of resources, and that's the common scenario these days. So when you want to prioritize documentation, these visibility and user views and all, they come in handy, so that you can project that these products have more visibility than others, and that way you can channelize your resources. So that is something I just wanted to add.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? We can take one last question.
Zulma.
Thanks, Vaibhav, for the session. You are very informative. You mentioned about the search queries, most search queries. So we have a category as search keywords that didn't result anything. But and we have a cadence like we draw the reports every month. But what happens is most of the time there are typos made by users itself. So what do you suggest? I mean, is it something that the users are too desperate to search something, or is it from our end that we should do anything?
I have faced this similar scenario, but not while technical writing, but while content writing. And most of the keywords which are very much trendy or which are most searched usually contains a typo. But I think at such time, what we do is we use tags here at Confluence and at Knowledge Hub to make sure. And recently, like I said, we are also using AI on our documentation platform. So I guess the AI team works differently apart from the technical writers, and I think they take this into consideration, the typos, the most search keywords as well. So most of the time, the most search keywords contain typos, and they take this into consideration. So that's the best answer I can give you right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. And before I go, I would like to thank the Tech Writers Tribe for providing me this opportunity once again. Thank you to Pune and all the respected members, senior members over here, and the volunteer teams as well. So thank you.